Hi, so I'm just doing another video on my Narcotics Anonymous study guide here. This part's about denial. Denial is the part of our disease that tells us we don't have a disease. When we are in denial, we are unable to see the reality of our addiction. We minimize its effect. We blame others, citing the too high expectations of families, friends, employers. We compare ourselves with other addicts whose addiction seems worse than our own. We may blame one particular drug. If we have been abstinent from drugs for some time, we might compare the current manifestation of our addiction with our drug use, rationalizing that nothing we do today could possibly be as bad as that was. One of the easiest ways to tell that we are in denial is when we find ourselves giving plausible but untrue reasons for our behavior. So an example is, have I given plausible but untrue reasons for my behavior? What have they been? Yeah, I mean, when I was a user, obviously when my addiction came back, my behaviors changed. So I just explained that I was becoming an introvert and I hated people and I didn't want to go anywhere or do anything. And also, like, I was never asleep, so I used insomnia as a cover for why I could never sleep. But I've probably developed insomnia now because of my addiction. Never really had insomnia before. And you know, I would say that, like, there was never any food in the house that I would want to eat. I don't want to cook because, there's never anything that, I need my kitchen a certain way, blah, blah, blah. I was making up all these excuses for why I was getting so thin. So, yeah, no, it was excuse after excuse after excuse. Have I compulsively acted on an obsession and then acted as if I had actually planned to act that way? Sure. I don't really recall, but as an addict, you excuse every single behavior that you have. Have I blamed other people for my behavior? You blame absolutely anybody and everything and anything that you can to cover your addiction. So yeah. Have I compared my addiction with other people's addiction? Is my addiction bad enough if I don't compare it to anyone else's? I absolutely was doing that. I was constantly giving myself excuses like, I only spend $200 a month on my habit. It's not like other addicts who are spending $200 every single day or more. I was using the excuse that I was self-medicating. I wasn't using to get high. So yeah, there was excuse after excuse after excuse. And again, my addiction wasn't as bad as everyone else, so why change it? Why the problem? Why this? Why that? I was constantly telling myself that I wasn't an addict. The whole entire time that I was an addict, I was telling myself I wasn't. Yeah, the lies we tell ourselves as addicts. Yeah, there's a lot that we lie about when we're using. Am I comparing a current manifestation of my addiction to the way my life was before I got clean? Am I plagued by the idea that I should know better? Sometimes I can do that to myself, for sure. Sometimes I get hard on myself and have those days where I'm like, you should have knew better. What the fuck were you doing? Like, beating myself up for all of the mistakes that I made. And yeah, I would constantly compare my life from how it was before I was a user to being an active user. Like, the differences in your way of life are intense. They're great. They're huge. It's no small thing, You can lie and lie and lie and lie and pretend and pretend and pretend, all you can and all you want to, but it's not going to change anything. It's not going to make anything better. It's just going to prolong your suffering and prolong your healing in the long run. So, have I been thinking that I have enough information about addiction and recovery to get my behavior under control before it gets out of hand? Oh, absolutely. I had those excuses that I could quit anytime I wanted to. I could quit before it got out of hand, before I got too deep into it. You're always telling yourself these things, and yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Am I avoiding action because I'm afraid I will be ashamed when I face the results of my addiction? Am I avoiding action because I'm worried about what others will think? Absolutely, to both those questions. When I was thinking about stopping, before I did, yeah, I was avoiding action because of all of the shame. And I was worried about what other people would think. But when I finally said fuck it and just didn't care anymore what people thought, and I came out public, that was the best decision I ever made. So, yeah. And then it goes on with hitting bottom, and despair and isolation. Our addiction finally brings us to a place where we can no longer deny the nature of our problem. All the lies, all the rationalizations, all the illusions fall away as we stand face to face with what our lives have become. We realize we've been living without hope. We find we become friendless or so completely disconnected that our relationships are a sham, a parody of love and intimacy. Though it may seem that all is lost when we find ourselves in this state, the truth is that we must pass through this place before we can embark upon our journey of recovery. What crisis brought me to recovery? The crisis with my best friend. Yeah, we of course didn't have the best of relationships, even as best friends, because of using. It wasn't healthy. It was toxic on both parts, but when you're best friends with somebody, you go through the good times and the bad times together, no matter what, right? And so our friendship constantly being okay and then not, so up and down. In one of our last fights, he freaking gave me the truth. He gave it to me. He gave me the brutal truth straight up and showed me the mistakes that I was making, what I was doing to myself and those are people around me. And at the time he meant it in not the best way or on the best terms. It was malicious, but you know what? That was what I needed. I needed that, you know, slap in the face, so to speak, because I would not have turned my life around otherwise if it wasn't for that. Yeah, I would still be using right now if it wasn't for him doing that. So, and yeah, our friendship is still up and down, but it is what it is. I love him a lot. I hope he's well. And yeah, I wish him well. I really do. What situation led me to formally work step 1? Well, again, that same thing answers the question pretty much. Well, I guess the situation would be actually going to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. Getting the book, reading the book, and getting the step guide. That's what got me to formally start working step 1. When did I first recognize my addiction as a problem? I think I've always known. You know, within like the first week that you're doing drugs, whether, you know, it's a problem or not. You know right away, within a few days, you know, or even in a day. It depends, like, you know, if you get high and then you come down and then, oh, I want to get high again, and it's all in the same day, you can know within a day whether you have a problem or not with addiction. Like, you will know that day. Did I try to correct it? Not at first. No, of course not. No, I was coming up with excuse after excuse after excuse why it wasn't that big of a problem, and if it ever did become too big of a problem, that's when I would handle it. But that's utterly ridiculous, because if you ever do let it get to that point, unless you get that slap in the face, you're not gonna change. You're not gonna come off of your addiction, you know? Powerlessness. As addicts, we react to the word powerless in a variety of ways. Some of us recognize that a more accurate description of our situation simply could not exist and admit our powerlessness with a sense of relief. Others recoil at the word, connecting it with weakness or believing it to indicate some kind of character deficiency. Understanding powerlessness and how admitting our own powerlessness is essential to our recovery. It will help us get over any negative feelings we may have about the concept. Over what exactly am I powerless? I am powerless over my addiction. I've done things while acting out on my addiction that I would never do and focusing on recovery. What were they? Well, anything and everything to do with drugs and partying and triggers, focusing on my recovery. I'm doing absolutely everything that I never ever did while I was an addict. You know, I'm doing the complete opposite. You have to. How does my personality change when I'm acting out on my addiction? I'm, way more arrogant, self-centered, mean-tempered, manipulative, whiny, yes. Passive to the point where I can't even protect myself. Oh, absolutely. Do I manipulate other people to maintain my addiction? Oh yeah, of course we do. All us addicts do. We use and abuse everything and everyone to maintain our addiction. We give ourselves excuses and everybody else in the world too. How has my addiction caused me to hurt myself or others? Well, obviously I was killing myself and hurting the people around me who were watching it, you know? Have I tried to quit using and found that I couldn't? Well, yeah, I tried many times. Have I quit using on my own and found that my life was so painful without drugs that absolutely. I'd be in so much pain, emotional, physical, blah, 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 that I'd just start up using again to get rid of it all. Those times were very, very dark and lonely and, yeah, very, very emotional. I don't really want to go back to that. And then, yeah, I think I'll do more. I'll end it here and I'll do more of the book tomorrow. That'll be good enough. Alrighty.